Competitive Science by Raven Likes Dragons. A Batman and DCU fanfic rated for teen and up audiences, with additional tags for Winged Tim Drake, Mad Scientist Tim Drake, Lex Luthor is Con-El, Connor Kent's parent, Enemies to Lovers, How Do I Tag, Kryptonian Biology, Cryptid Bat Family, Scientist Con-El, Connor Kent, Kind of, Bad Flirting, Eldritch Gotham City. Summary. In an effort to find out more about the elusive vigilantes of Gotham, one Connor Kent gets himself captured by a very interested Tim Drake. So, while Tim tries to find out how kryptonians work, Connor tries to investigate Tim's quirks as Red Robin. This is what happens when two scientists try to study each other. I wrote this because I thought it would be funny. Basically, Connor is raised by Lex Luthor, and the Bats are all some kind of cryptid weirdos who don't know how to function as humans. Also, maybe the two scientists fall in love. Chapter 1. The Worst Possible Idea. Connor Kent had, on several occasions, been told that he was quite smart. The same could not be said for Superboy. Seeing as they were the same person, there were often moments in which Connor justified making very stupid decisions by thinking he'll just wear the Superboy outfit while doing it, and bam, problem solved. Now the only person knowing it was Connor making stupid decisions would be Clark, and Clark already knew how good he was at that. Now that we have established how the decision was justified, we should take a look at said decision. Connor had been fascinated with the Bats ever since he saw them stop a bank heist in under 5 minutes, and then disappear before anyone even noticed. He was immediately plagued with questions. Did the Robins come from a different planet like Hawkgirl, or were they metahumans? Did Batman create them? Why were their wings so different from the ones Batman and the various women of the family possessed? Of course, he had heard of them before. It was very hard not to, even if he didn't live in Gotham. One question on why he couldn't fly over it was all it took for Clark to tell him the story like an ancient legend. So, apparently, the Batman had just appeared one day and started punching criminals. Some thought he was an ancient deity, others thought he was just some guy in a suit. Not even the Justice League knew what he was. Then, one after the other, there were more of them. First, a young boy with blue and black bird wings they called Robin, but it didn't stop with him. More and more winged people started roaming the roofs of Gotham, like some kind of avian mafia family. And maybe they were. Nobody knew. But at least he hadn't heard any reports of them decapitating people, so maybe not. Now, years later, through various title changes, Robin was a middle schooler with black and green wings. Clark theorized that the original Robin was now called Nightwing, and Connor didn't have a reason to doubt him yet. But that was the problem, wasn't it? It was all just theorizing. No facts and no contact with the subjects. If Lex Luthor had taught Connor one thing, it was that you always check your experiments. Nope, scratch that. The first thing Lex had taught Connor was tax fraud. But he couldn't really use that for superhero stuff. So here he was, gearing up to fly over Gotham. His target was the one they called Red Robin. After copious amounts of research, Connor had decided on him because he was the one who seemed closest in age. Maybe it would help him in his quest to find out more about the strange family. Stepping softly out of his bedroom window, the wind welcomed him into the night. He let himself fall forward. Flying was something he loved. The freedom of being Superboy was usually the only reprieve he got from his life as LexCorp heir and future. After he was discovered about 3 years ago, there had been a stretch of time only Luthor cared about him. Superman was horrified. Understandably so, but still, he had taken his sweet time coming to terms with everything. Out of options, Connor had gone back to Lex and began training as his successor. It was mostly boring things, like etiquette and statistics. His only glimpse of light were the science lessons he got. Since Lex Luthor was stupidly rich, every one of his tutors was someone incredibly accomplished. Only the best of the best, or something. Connor had excelled at biology, desperate to understand his own, and naturally curious as he was. Then, a year later, Superman came along, offering a way out and a cape. Connor took the superhero identity, but stayed at LexCorp. He didn't want to leave his only father figure behind, morally ambiguous as he may be. And Lex let him be Superboy. They both knew he knew, but as long as no one talked about it, and Connor didn't go around spilling company secrets, they stayed in a strange sort of co-parenting limbo, where Lex has Connor on weekdays and Clark did the mentoring whenever Connor chooses to jump out of his window and fly around. Like right now, for example. Except he really hoped to not meet Clark right now. Connor zips past Metropolis skyscrapers, feeling the wind whip his skin with cold night air. He watches as the ground below him changes from gray streets to open fields over winding rivers, and lastly, crossing the huge bridges that connect Gotham City to the rest of the continent, the dark rooftops of the Bat's territory. His feet met dark concrete as he lands silently on top of an old building. No backing out now. He feels the city around him murmur, hissing of secrets he couldn't see even with his heat vision. It is clawing at his leather jacket and making him realize how sheltered his life in Metropolis had been. The sound of, at least, 6 different robberies, the snapping of bones, and the high-pitched screams of bystanders. This was such a bad idea. He is so not prepared for any of this. It seems as if the city is alive, throwing its worst aspects before his feet to make him leave. It doesn't want him here. The foggy air is stuffing his lungs with ash. Connor shakes himself. He is not just some guy who wandered in here. He has superpowers, and a mission. Said mission is currently find Red Robin by searching the spots he is often seen at, talking to and maybe befriending the other hero, and lastly, flying home and never telling anyone about what happened. Sounds foolproof. Which is why that's exactly what he is going to do. The first few places he searches, all random rooftops, he made himself a little map, noted down every place of interest, turning up empty. Only rats and crows for companions. His enthusiasm begins to dwindle. Maybe he should just skip phase 1 and 2. Just going home sounds very appealing right now. But then, just out of the corner of his eye, he spots movement. The rustling of feathers too big for a bird, and a flash of red. Connor whips around, catapulting himself to the edge of the roof to look down, the adrenaline shutting down his brain for a moment. He spots it again, chasing the flashes like an overgrown dog, set after a butterfly. Every time he thinks he has it, the figure slips out of his grasp. They vault over smokestacks like it's nothing, getting lost in the shadows behind walls and fences, but never disappearing completely. Pulling himself out into the night like a tidal wave, Connor gets swept along buildings he's never seen. Getting lost in the strangely warm darkness of Gotham, he doesn't know if he'll ever find his way back, or if he ever wants to. The chase leads him to a dark alley, all his senses zeroed in on one piece of red fabric hanging off a fire escape. He lands softly, completely forgetting to look around, and curiously approaches the fluttering material. Just as he reaches towards it, a piercing headache splits his perception. A hand wraps around his throat, and he feels it adorned with the familiar sting of kryptonite. Before he registers it, his knees hit the ground, followed shortly by the side of his head. The only thing he sees before his vision goes dark are huge red wings standing out against the gray alley. If he was a dog, then what he chased definitely wasn't a butterfly. Maybe he did find Red Robin. Chapter 2. Very professional negotiations. Something is holding his wrist down. No, his entire body is fixed to a chair. His limbs still feel like lead. Connor groaned quietly while he tries to lift his head. It's the only part he can actually move. Sluggish as if through water, his neck muscles comply, and he finally opens his eyes. Connor blinks. The room in front of him seems to be some kind of warehouse. No windows, and too big for an interrogation room, even though he feels like it's only a matter of time before he'll be introduced to some bat torture techniques. The walls are impossible for him to see through. They were obviously prepared for someone with his skill set. He feels dread crawl up his spine. He's helpless, powers nullified, his senses dulled. He would die here, and nobody would care because he isn't Superman, and the world doesn't actually need him. Oh, great, now he's hyperventilating. What a superhero he is. His hands clench, but at least he can move them again. The sickness is also receding, but his heart is trying to beat him up from inside his body, throwing itself against his chest. It's painful, and Connor is breathing way too fast, and he can hear his own blood rush. The sound gets reflected off every wall around him, closing in. You just talked yourself into a panic attack in... The voice paused. About 30 seconds. Connor's head snapped up, and he notices that a white door to his side has opened. A guy about his age, leaning against the frame. Connor is momentarily stunned out of his spiral. So that's Red Robin, at least the name fits. He's wearing a skin-tight black and red suit, with an X of what looks like belts around his chest. Black hair that's longer than expected from a superhero, but not tied back, falls around his face, framing delicate features. It takes Connor a moment to notice the wings still partially hidden behind the door, feathers fading from bright red to nearly black. Too stunned to speak, he just stares. Apparently, long enough for Robin to clear his throat. "Are you okay?" he asks, as if he didn't tie Connor to a chair, the kryptonite poisoning also going ignored. "No," Connor responds incredulously. "Everything hurts. I can't feel my legs, and I'm tied up in someone's basement. Does that sound okay to you?" There he goes again, pissing off dangerous people. Maybe it's the Kryptonian DNA, but lately, he seems to have the survival instincts of a pet hamster. Like the ones that crawl behind your fridge and just die, leaving you to find its dehydrated corpse when moving out. Oh, maybe that's what Clark will feel like when he finds Connor's body, dumped in the Gotham River. At least, he'll be more hydrated than the hamster. Red Robin looks mildly amused. "You could have ended up so much worse, believe me. I won't harm you. Probably. I just have a few tests I want to run. Actually, if you could describe to me your exact symptoms, I can just finish the first one right now." His wings fluff up as he says it, almost like he's excited. "I already told you how I feel. General pain everywhere. That's it." Connor debates with himself for a moment, but ultimately decides to continue being stupid. He was kind of curious about the results. "What do you mean tests? You want my blood or something? Aren't you supposed to be crime fighting?" "I am, and I do. Just on break right now." The other boy leaves his spot at the door, stalking over to Connor's chair. His feet barely make any sound on the concrete floor. Connor leans back as Robin studies his face. Way too close. Connor can count his freckles from this distance. If Robin had any. Which he does not. Somewhere in Connor's brain opens a folder titled Red Robin. 2 mental notes being filed away. Number 1, no sense of personal space. Number 2, does not have freckles. Any information is good information, if you're trying to research while tied up. "You have a piercing? How?" Robin is still staring him down. "What? Oh, no, it's fake." Connor had completely forgotten about the clip-on earrings. That was part of his costume. He just thought it looked cool, but being indestructible made piercing appointments a bit too awkward. Robin didn't respond at first. He just stood up to press a few buttons, making some kind of desk slide out of the wall, which he jumped onto, letting his legs dangle. Then, with the most matter-of-fact voice Connor had ever heard, he said, "I want to pierce your ears." "No!" It came out more shrill than Connor had intended. "Yes. Why?" Robin looked at him, blinked once, as if he was actually considering his answer. "I want to test how fast you heal. Do you not want a piercing?" This was going way too fast for Connor. One moment, he's waking up tied to a chair, and now he's, still tied to a chair, debating whether or not a complete stranger, who is also a very dangerous vigilante, could shove a needle through his ear. "Could we postpone that? Like, not a hard no, just, if you want me to allow you to do that, which I would appreciate, I need to know you a bit better, and also trust you. So, if I get you to trust me, I get to do my experiments, and you won't complain or try to kill me." Connor nods. Robin pauses and starts looking at Connor with that strangely intense stare of his. "I'm not sure how to do that," he admits quietly. Suddenly, he jumps up, obviously getting an idea, wings fluttering, blowing air in Connor's face. "Wait here, I'll be back," he says over his shoulder, before nearly running out of the door. Connor just sits there, stunned, the exchange still getting processed in his head. "You know I can't leave, right?" Tim runs out so fast he nearly hit his wings on the doorway. That would have been so embarrassing. He quickly shuts it to avoid Superboy seeing anything that might make it obvious how little Tim actually knew what he was doing. He had nearly begged Bruce to be the guy's babysitter for the time being, and Bruce had agreed on the condition that Tim wasn't allowed to hurt him. Kinda hypocritical, since Superboy had chased him first. Who knows what would have happened if Tim hadn't noticed him? Standing in front of his computer, he realizes that he hadn't even asked Superboy what that was about. The excitement of finally getting to know more about him had completely erased the thought from his mind. He will have to ask next time. For now, he has a call to make. Calling anyone in his family was out of the question. They would make fun of him until eternity, and most of them also had no clue how to socialize. No, he needed someone a bit more normal, and also someone who still owed him a favor. If befriending Superboy was what he had to do to experiment behind Bruce's back, then that is what he would do. It didn't count as hurting him if Superboy allowed it, right? And also, maybe coincidentally, Tim also thought that Connor was just a little bit very hot. Getting to know him better, for science purposes only, obviously, could only be beneficial. With a deep, long-suffering breath, he pressed the call button, his screen lighting up with a smiling face a moment later. "Hey, Tim, how are you?" Oh, how he dreaded the words he was about to say. But sometimes, you have to make sacrifices. "I need your help, Stephanie." Chapter 3. Teenage Vigilante Relationship Advice. "Tim, I love you, but..." Stephanie massages her forehead. Tim thinks that's a bit dramatic, but maybe she has spent too much time around Dick lately. "So, you kidnapped a super..." "Oh, it wasn't actually that hard." "Shut up, I'm talking." Her head emerges from her hands to glare at him. "You kidnapped Superboy, and Batman allowed you to do your whole evil scientist thing until Big Blue shows up. Which is questionable enough." Tim is about to answer when a held-up pointer finger interrupts him, so he just nods. But it should be mentioned that Tim is not evil, and he also hopes Superboy knows that. "What I don't understand is where the problem in that situation is for you. From his perspective, obviously. But we have enough kryptonite to take out an army." Tim internally says goodbye to his pride and dignity. He said I can test his healing if he trusts me enough to let me pierce his ears, which would be very important for my mission. But I don't know how to do that, so I called you. The trust thing, I mean. Stephanie is silent for about 10 seconds, just blinking at him. Tim thinks she is fighting the urge to make fun of him. "You want me to help you make a friend," she coos, as if he's a middle schooler on his first day in a new class. "Of course I'll help you, but I need you to promise me I get to tell every one of your siblings about this. I'll leak your catfish Instagram accounts to Bruce if you tell anyone about this." Tim hisses. He knew this was a bad idea, but he was currently out of good ones. Steph looks at him like he just threatened her firstborn. "Don't you dare. I thought we were friends. You know I need those for my investigations, and I'm pretty sure you have a few as well. I just haven't found them yet." He doesn't laugh at her, because Red Robin doesn't do that, but he does smile a bit. "And you never will. So, do we have a deal? I keep the blackmail to myself, and you help me function socially like a normal person." Stephanie narrows her eyes at him, before she grumbles. "I have to ask Babs to find your accounts. This won't be the last time you heard from me, Mr. Drake. But in the meantime, yes, I'll help you." This time, Tim does laugh, because fuck Red Robin, Steph knows his secret identity anyway. His stomach fills with that fuzzy, warm feeling he gets every time he is reminded that there are actually people that even want to know him, and his wings fluff up a bit. Hopefully, Steph can't tell. Having feelings is so embarrassing. I just need his trust. We don't have to be best friends or anything. He distracts. You better not be. That's my job. She seriously needs to stop saying that stuff. He is not nearly healed enough to believe her. Steph rubs her hands together. Great. Now she's committed. Alright, let's do this. The next 10 minutes are spent with Steph telling Tim that he should get to know Superboy before doing any experiments, which Tim thinks is stupid, because the experiments are there to get to know him. Probably not in the way Steph means, but that's just splitting hairs. You should play 20 questions. No. Connor jolts awake as the door to his cell is thrown open. Wake up, we're playing 20 questions. Red Robin says, sitting down in front of him. The guy is so incredibly strange. Kind of endearing, but also creepy considering Connor still hasn't gained any of his superpowers back. He really prefers having his superpowers. In the last hour, Connor tried very hard to reach his TTK. He almost feels naked without it, like one of his limbs fell asleep and is now refusing to wake up. Not even any static, just nothing. He has managed to keep himself out of panicking, solely because of the fact that RR seems so incredibly unprepared for any kind of violent interrogation. Connor was beginning to get the idea that this wasn't even a room meant for that. His chair was just standing there, without anything securing it to the ground, and it was also a regular lawn chair, which he hadn't noticed at first. But at least Connor had come up with a plan. Even if his position wasn't ideal at the moment, he could still continue his research. He just had to be sneaky about it. Not his forte, but he would make do. He would study Red Robin and then maybe find out where the rest of the bats came from, while he was at it. Lex Luthor probably wouldn't miss him until he starts publicly working for someone else, and Superman will just assume that he wants to focus on his studies or something. No harm done. Despite the strangeness of playing party games with his captor, the idea does play right in Connor's cards. Yeah, sure. Do I get untied for that? I'll think about it. You start, Red responds, surprising Connor. It would probably be beneficial for Connor to start by asking something simple, something reasonable for his situation, and not suspicious, so he tries, Where am I? My main safe house at the moment. I can't tell you the exact location, but I can tell you that you're not actually in my basement. At the statement, his face does something that could maybe be described as a reassuring smile, but painted by one of those people who drew cats in the medieval times. That is to say, Connor is not reassured. Red seems to remember he's supposed to ask a question when Connor doesn't respond. He's too busy thinking about medieval cat paintings. Oh, yeah, right, how does your telekinesis work? Clearing his head, Connor responds as honestly as he can. I don't really know. It's just, like I have nerves in the air around me, and I can feel anything that's going on. Like your hands, but everywhere. So, like hands, I can also touch things, but it's always active. I can't explain it as anything else, but I can pick up people and flying with them by only touching them at one point. He fights the urge to facepalm. Pretty useless since his hands are still tied up. He is usually not this bad at talking. A tiny computer on Red's wrist gets powered up, which he starts typing into. That's pretty interesting. And so you don't need to do the Princess Carrie stuff. This is the exact moment Connor realizes that he has gotten way too comfortable around a guy who could kill him. Because he has opened his mouth, the usual Superboy persona takes over, and he doesn't say something like, "No, that is not necessary for me," but instead, "You disappointed, pretty boy? He is going to die here, and it will be his own fault." Chapter 4. Hard to laugh when it's hard to breathe. Tim might have forgotten how to function. No amount of Batman training could have prepared him for this moment. No backup plans in case the guy you tied up in your safe house suddenly starts flirting with you. The moment those words left Superboy's mouth, his wings had instantly come up to cover his face. Great. Now he looked like a very flustered ball of feathers. Tim silently assured himself to take this to his grave. Nobody will ever know. It wasn't that flirting was unexpected from Superboy. Quite the opposite, really. In every video Tim had seen in his research, he was nothing if not thorough. It seemed to be his main course of handling social interactions, and the rational side of Tim's brain, the one currently quieted down by an air raid siren going off in his head, tried to tell him that Superboy probably didn't mean it, and was just like that. But Tim just wasn't used to being flirted with. Excluding Harley Quinn, because she was definitely like that. He had no idea how to react. Slowly lowering his wings and doing everything to avoid Superboy's eyes. Why are they pretty? It's unfair. He forces out, "That's your question?" Superboy, screw him. Tim is going to throw something at his face. Preferably kryptonite. Leans forward, as much as his bindings allow, and smirks. "Ooh, disgusting. Stop that." "Yeah, why not? I'm curious." "No, I'm not disappointed, first off." Tim points at his back, ignoring the still puffed-up feathers. "I can fly. And secondly, I prefer not to be touched." That may be a lie, but he has survived so far without physical contact, and he will continue to do so. Superboy just continues his stupid smirk and says, "Shame." After Tim narrowly avoids breaking Batman's no-kill rule, the game passes pretty uneventfully. Superboy doesn't seem too devastated when Tim tells him that he will stay under surveillance until Superman returns to Earth. And Tim finds out that Superboy chasing him was part actual stupidity and part some kind of laser focus that his creator implemented to make him less likely to be distracted when fighting, by things like dying civilians. Tim has some words he would like to tell said creator, most of which would make Jason very proud. Tim also comes to the realization that he, to his sorrow, cannot keep Superboy tied to a chair for the coming weeks, and promptly orders a few things one would need for a temporary bedroom. At least watching him assemble an IKEA bed will give Tim time to test his problem-solving skills. "Does this mean we're roommates now?" Superboy asks, after Tim inquired about his eating habits. Apparently, it is not normal to only eat every second day, and having a captive means keeping said captive alive and unmalnutritioned. Tim proceeds to leave the room without answering, to establish dominance or something. One night has to be manageable. Not being able to lie down, Tim has had worse, so it should probably be fine. Even for someone from Metropolis. To Connor's surprise, he actually survived the first day. He isn't sure how long that's going to last, but still. Has to count for something, right? The thing currently bothering him is the fact that Red Robin is kind of cute. Sure, the flirting was an accident, but the way he reacted had triggered something in Connor that just wanted to scoop him up into his arms and gift him homemade cookies or whatever birds eat. Ever since Red Robin had untied his hands, Connor had been very careful not to touch him, even if he really wants to. He's a very physical person by nature. Better not give him a reason to hate Connor more than he already does. Yes, he is cute, but the look of absolute disgust Connor receives every time he tries to talk to him makes his feelings very obvious. The way Robin moves just makes concentrating kind of difficult. He doesn't seem at all impacted by the added weight of his wings, which Connor also wants to touch, provide. Every step completely silent, every movement deliberate, and thoroughly thought out. It makes him fascinating to study. Lost in thought, sitting on the small bed in the corner of his room/cell, about a week after Connor's stupidity landed him in Gotham, the book he was reading completely forgotten, Connor comes to the conclusion that he really needs to meet the rest of Red Robin's family to make accurate assumptions about his mutations. After all, some of the weirdness might also be his personality. Ah, fuck! There's a loud thud outside his door. Maybe something crashing into a wall? Connor isn't sure. He has only had access to his superpowers during testing the past week, and the room is pretty well insulated. He jumps up as his door slams open, prepared to fight whatever comes bursting out, only to promptly drop his stance when he spots Robin leaning against the doorframe the exact moment the other notices him. I knew I forgot something. Stupid spoiler should have warned me. He mumbles, ignoring Connor and letting his head fall against the wall. He seems off. His usually straight stance, nowhere to be seen. Something about the way he speaks is slightly slurred, the way Connor usually only sees in intoxicated people. It makes his skin crawl. This isn't normal. Something is wrong. Connor speaks softly. He tries not to startle him. Are you okay? Red Robin pauses for a moment. Not really. I mean, probably will be, but I forgot I had a super in my emergency room, and that's not a good sign, is it? I'm talking too much. I should stop talking now. Oh, yeah, something is definitely wrong. What happened? Just Ivy. She's usually not that strong, though. I got hit with some kind of pollen. Didn't even notice until I was saying goodbye to the others. I usually lock myself in here until the effects fade. Robin is smiling. Drug-induced, no doubt. But it's still turning Connor's brain to mush. Said brain mush formulates the following response. I can leave if you want me to. The death glare he expected never follows. Instead, he hears a soft laugh. God bless his memory, that will be forever ingrained behind his eyes. You think I'm stupid? Robin steps closer, forcing Connor to walk back against his bed. I'm a master detective. You cannot trick me. A single finger against Connor's chest makes him sit down on the edge. Suddenly, there is a body in his lap, warm hands holding his face, sharp nails along his jaw, and the white lenses of a domino mask directly in front of it. Robin seems to be studying his features. There's something curiously clinical about his touch, separating individual hairs to look at them, as Connor fights the urge to reach out at the feathers curling around them, like a personal sunset. Sober Robin would not be happy about this. Sober Robin would kick his ass. He needs to de-escalate the situation. Buddy, I think non-high you will regret this later, so you should probably lock yourself in another room and go back to disliking me a normal amount instead of hating me after this, because I have no idea what to do right now. Robin's brow furrows. I don't hate you, he whispers, and proceeds to completely ignore everything else Connor said. At least he tried. The only other option Connor sees is to just let him do whatever he wants. So, fair, no one's gotten hurt, and Connor doesn't think trying to move him, by force, will do much good. Guess this is his life now. Oh, there are fingers in his mouth. Robin is looking at his teeth, and he's suddenly very thankful to have received a toothbrush with his furniture that he could use in the small washroom connected to his. It feels more like a dental exam than any kind of sexy, but Connor's heart is still beating out of his chest. If he wasn't a Kryptonian, he would probably be collapsing from lack of oxygen to his brain, or something, because he has completely neglected breathing for the past few minutes. Removing his hands from Connor's mouth and wiping them on his shirt, Connor would complain if they weren't borrowed from his captor. Robin stares up at him, making Connor realize that he is still shorter than him, even when sitting on his lap. You're so big, like a woman, Robin mumbles. The only thing keeping Connor's brain running, despite the compliment, is his confusion. Last time he checked, human women are usually smaller than the men. At least in Metropolis. Maybe Gotham was different, though. Before he can dwell on it too long, he feels a weight on his chest. Looking down, reveals a sleeping Red Robin, slowly tipping to the side. Guess he's sleeping on the floor tonight, just in case Robin wakes up in the night and decides it's never too late to commit murder. Chapter 5. Oh no, feelings! Tim wakes up in his emergency room, blinking up at the familiar ceiling, vague memories swirling in his head. He is hungry. Everything feels weird. Since when does he have a bed in this room? He doesn't. He knows. He doesn't because he shredded the last one during a run-in with fear toxin. So why is he not on the floor? Panic seizes Tim's chest, doing his best to control his breathing, as to not alert any enemies who might be nearby. He scans his surroundings. No footsteps, no audible signs of life at all. He can't see anything but the ceiling without moving his head, so he goes through his plans while keeping his eyes closed. He needs to calm down, and remember what happened last night. After their fight with Ivy, he had excused himself from Batman. Can't let the family find out that he got hit, or he'll have to go with them to the Batcave, and he needs to be at his safe house. Why did he need to be at his safe house, though? Oh fuck, Superboy! Tim sits up frantically, eyes flying open, wings spreading so fast that he hits the left one against the wall. Ouch, that was stupid. His panic shifts. He is in less immediate danger, yes, but he also had ample opportunity to do something really dumb last night. Who knows what the pollen told him to do? What if he killed the guy? He quickly checks his kryptonite pouch. Still closed. Good. He spots him laying on his back next to the bed. He isn't breathing. In his panic, Tim completely forgets about the super part of Superboy and scrambles to his side, wings shielding him from invisible and non-existent threats. Tim starts shaking the body in front of him, dread clouding his mind. He wasn't actually serious about killing Superboy. He's not moving. Hey, wake up! He screams it, as if screaming at the dead has ever worked. As if his father didn't stay just as dead as he was when Tim had begged for him to respond. But Superboy does move. A lot, actually. He sits up and wraps his arms around Tim. Superboy feels warm and very not dead. You're okay. Everything's okay, he says softly against Tim's hair. Tim hates it. He is not a child. He doesn't need to be held. But he still lets Superboy do so. Tim lets himself get wrapped up in strong arms and realizes he hasn't felt like this since he stopped being Robin, since he started isolating himself from the other bats, only meeting for missions, despite being invited to come back home. He also realizes that he's shaking. Fuck, he really needs to get a grip. This is embarrassing. What happened? Superboy asks. No, whispers, like he's scared of startling Tim. That's what he gets for being weak. Only pity and glass gloves. Tim frees himself and immediately regrets it, missing the warmth at his chest. He stands up. Nothing, it's just residual effects from Ivy's pollen. I can't really remember what happened last night, so when I couldn't see you breathing, I thought I killed you. He keeps his voice steady, banishing all emotions from it. At least his training counts for something. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't really need to breathe when I sleep because of my Kryptonian DNA. You didn't hurt me, don't worry. Superboy hesitates for a moment, looks at the floor, avoiding Tim's eyes. You, fell asleep on me. Oh, he's blushing, and Tim's pretty sure he himself is too. You sat in my lap and kinda, God, I don't know how to say this, mapped out my face with your hands. The last sentence goes up like a question, as if he doesn't really know what Tim was actually doing. Oh, and my chest too. Yep, that's it. No hurting. Yes, kill him. That would have been a better outcome. Fuck the PTSD. This is worse. Tim can't look at him. He wants to sink into the ground. He can never show his face to Superboy again. He will have to leave Gotham in shame, get a new identity and start living in France or something. That would be something he'd do. Get high and throw himself at the hottest guy in his vicinity, who is also his captive and can't leave. Oh God, did Tim assault him? I have to apologize. I touched you without permission. I'm so sorry. If you'll excuse me, I'll just go commit suicide. Maybe take out the Joker on the way out, you know? Superboy gives him a strange look. I don't mind. I could have probably just picked you up if I was uncomfortable. You're way too light, by the way. I just thought it was best not to touch you because you said you don't like it. I had no idea what I was meant to do. His head is tilted like a dog's. The word's way too kind for Tim's brain to understand. Something about Superboy triggers his instincts. Tim wants to give him things, to see him smile, and it scares him. It was still not okay for me to do. Tim stops to think, long overdue. His notes. Since Superboy actually doesn't sound like he's mad, or any negative feeling towards Tim for that matter. Maybe he can still hope to gain his trust before Superman returns. Mission, study a half-Kryptonian, is back online. The fact that Tim might also want Superboy to like him because of non-mission related reasons gets pushed to the back of his head for a moment. You get one request. If I can fulfill it, I will. If not, you get to pick something different. That's my try to make it up to you. Bad idea, Tim. He has a lot of those recently. Superboy is back to his old self, it seems. He should have known it wouldn't take long. You really don't have to do that. I usually don't complain about cute guys sitting on my lap. Though, I prefer them to be sober if you ever want to do me a favor. Tim shuts him up with a hand over his mouth, which Superboy proceeds to lick. Tim lets out an inhuman, shrieking sound and whacks him in the face with his wing. Now that is something a normal person would apologize for. Superboy winks. Tim should have hit harder. Trying to hide his blush, Tim responds. It was necessary, and you are invulnerable. Take the offer or don't. I don't care. He is lying again, and maybe he even hopes Superboy can tell. Because he does care. I want to see the sun. I just miss it, and I technically need it to survive. It wouldn't be smart to let him out, but it feels cruel to deny him. The lamps in this room can't replace the real thing. If he asks Steph for help again, they should be able to apprehend Superboy, even in a worst-case scenario. And a strange, selfish part of his brain wants Superboy to meet his family. He sighs. Okay, but if you try anything stupid, Superman won't have much left to collect when he comes back. Dude, I would believe you, but you just freaked out because you thought you hurt me. I think you just don't want to admit that you like me. He was right. Oh God, he was right. Time to repress a lot more feelings for the next few weeks. Tim is sure Superboy doesn't mean any of the nice things he says, but he can't help reacting anyways. Notes. I'm not sure I'm happy with this chapter, but oh well. Thanks for reading. If you enjoyed this fic, you can read ahead of me if you want, by following the link in the description below. If you enjoyed my reading, you can subscribe if you want, or go down to the comments and tell me what else I should read. Thank you for listening. Female birds of prey are usually larger than the males. Tim actually does mean that as a compliment. Ivy dosed them with something like bat-grade weed because her girlfriend convinced her that it would be funny. Con. Oh my god, he must hate me. Tim. Hee hee, muscles.